Imagine a world where um, your doctor, your car, and even like your favorite video game all know exactly what you're going to do before you actually do it.
It sounds a bit intense.
Yeah, it really does. Like a pitch for some futuristic sci-fi movie. But that is the very real, very imminent reality buried inside today's stack of source material.
And it's moving
So
fast.
fast.
Yeah.
We're looking at a highly curated digest of tech developments from April 18th, 2026. And the through line connecting all these updates is just, well, it's genuinely staggering to me.
It really represents a massive paradigm shift.
Right, because for the last few decades, we've basically treated artificial intelligence as a passive tool, you know?
Yeah.
It just sat there in the digital toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. Just waiting for us to type a prompt or run a search query.
Yeah. But looking at this digest, I mean, that era is definitively over.
We are absolutely crossing a very distinct threshold here. The systems detailed in these sources, they aren't just computing when commanded anymore.
Right.
They are comprehending their environments, they're anticipating human needs and actively assisting. It's really the evolution from a reactive utility to a proactive collaborator.
Okay, so let's unpack the mechanics behind this, because the implications here are about to touch literally every single corner of your daily life.
No question about it.
The mission for our deep dive today is to help you, the listener, cut through the deafening noise of the tech news cycle and really trace this singular shift.
Which is so easy to miss if you're just looking at individual headlines.
Exactly. So we're going to explore how AI is stepping out of the background to become an active companion. And, just to be clear, we aren't going to just read you some dry list of software updates.
No, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. We're going to break down the underlying logic connecting, like the medical scans at your local hospital, the route you take on your morning commute, the art hanging in galleries, and the entertainment you consume right in your living room.
And what's fascinating is that the underlying mechanism driving all four of those, seemingly unrelated areas is the exact same transition.
Which is?
It's the transition from simple pattern recognition to active behavioral prediction.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so the systems are no longer just identifying what happened in the past. They are actively calculating the highest probability of what happens next.
Okay, I want to start with probably the highest stakes environment in our digest today, which is the hospital.
A very critical area, yeah.
The source material highlights this massive leap forward in AI systems analyzing medical imagery. We are talking about detecting the early stages of cancer, heart disease, complex internal anomalies, all of it.
And doing it with incredible precision.
Right. The digest notes that these deep learning algorithms are now basically rivaling human specialists in diagnostic accuracy, but they operate in a fraction of the
It's a
time.
tiny fraction, yeah.
But I kind of want to look under the hood here, because the phrase deep learning, it gets thrown around constantly.
It really does. It's a huge buzzword.
Yeah. But how is this software actually processing an MRI differently than, say, a human radiologist?
Well, to understand the leap, you kind of have to look at the limitations of human visual processing first.
Okay, makes sense.
So a human radiologist scanning a 3D MRI is essentially scrolling through hundreds of 2D slices of tissue.
Right, just looking at cross sections.
Exactly. And they are relying on biological eyesight and memory to spot microscopic deviations, like a cluster of pixels that just looks slightly denser than the surrounding tissue.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. It requires an immense cognitive load. The human brain gets tired. But the deep learning algorithm, it doesn't look at an image the way a human does at all.
What is it instead?
It translates that scan into a massive mathematical matrix.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's not looking for like a visual shadow on a lung or something.
Not at all.
It's looking at the actual numerical values of the scan and comparing the mathematical distance between those values and the values of a million known tumors.
Precisely. It breaks the image down into these really complex layers of features. So the first layer might just map the edges of organs.
Okay.
And then the next layer maps tissue density. The next layer after that maps spatial relationships between blood vessels.
It's a lot of data.
It's a staggering amount.
Yep.
And it weights all these variables simultaneously across millions of data points instantly.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's analyzing high-dimensional data that a human brain simply isn't architected to hold in working memory all at once.
Which, I mean, that makes total sense mathematically. But, I have to say, as a patient, it triggers this immediate pushback for me.
I completely understand that. It's a very common reaction.
Right, because if I'm sitting in some sterile room and a machine is calculating the spatial relationships of my internal organs, to diagnose a life-threatening illness, I feel like I'm losing the human touch.
You feel like you're just a number.
Exactly.
Yes.
Are we just, like, handing our critical medical decisions over to this black box?
Well, when people hear about automation in healthcare, they usually picture this cold, robotic assembly line.
Yeah, like a factory.
Right. But the source material details something quite different, actually. The AI isn't replacing the doctor's authority at all.
Okay.
It's being deployed to alleviate the chronic hospital staff shortages and these massive diagnostic backlogs we've been seeing.
So it's basically like having a superhuman medical resident,
That is a great way to look at it.
like an assistant doing all the exhausting, microscopic, heavy lifting in the background, which, theoretically anyway, frees up the senior doctor to actually walk into the room, look you in the eye, and devise a personalized plan.
That analogy hits the absolute core of what the sources are reporting here. The introduction of this technology is fundamentally shifting the primary bottleneck in medical care.
Wait, I'm curious what you mean by the bottleneck.
Well, for the last century, basically the bottleneck in medicine has been the diagnosis itself.
Oh, interesting. Just figuring out what's wrong.
Exactly. Figuring out what is wrong takes the most time, the most cognitive energy, and the most specialized resources.
Right.
A specialist might spend 4 hours in a dark room analyzing your scans just to reach a baseline conclusion.
Yeah, which takes them away from the patient.
Right. So by outsourcing that high-dimensional data sorting to the AI, the diagnosis happens almost instantly. The bottleneck moves.
So the new focus of healthcare becomes what?
It becomes complex decision-making and human empathy.
Okay, so you're saying that by injecting a highly advanced non-human machine right into the middle of the medical process, we actually carve out more space for humanity.
Exactly. That's the paradox of it.
That's fascinating. The doctor isn't totally brunned out from squinting at screens all day, so they
Yeah.
actually have the energy to understand your specific lifestyle, your family context, and really tailor the treatment.
Yes, they finally have the bandwidth to practice the art of medicine rather than just the mechanics of data analysis. It builds a foundation for hyper-personalized care.
Wow. Okay, so if an AI can map the microscopic pathways of our biology to predict a tumor, what happens when you apply that exact same predictive mapping to, like, the macro pathways of a city grid?
That is the perfect transition.
Yeah, because the second major development in our digest transitions away from the controlled environment of a hospital to the totally chaotic, unpredictable environment of the open road.
It's a major shift from internal biology to external geography, absolutely. But what's really striking is that the predictive intelligence operates on the exact same principles.
So the major automakers are currently rolling out these smart systems that learn from each specific journey you take.
Right.
And according to the digest, the AI anticipates traffic jams before they even form. It adjusts the vehicle's internal settings based on incoming weather data, suggests optimal routes to conserve fuel, and actively reduces the likelihood of accidents.
It's doing a lot all at once.
It is. But what really stands out to me is how the car intuitively learns your commute.
Yes, it fundamentally alters the relationship between the driver and the vehicle. We are moving completely from reactive navigation to predictive navigation.
Which is huge because the standard GPS is entirely reactive.
Entirely.
It looks at the current state of the map, sees a red line indicating heavy traffic, and tells you to take the next exit.
Right. It's just reporting what's already happening.
But this AI is predictive. It really reminds me of riding with a seasoned local cab driver.
I like that comparison.
You know, the kind of driver who doesn't even need a map because they just sense that a rainstorm at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday is going to flood the lower highway.
Right.
So they already have a back road in mind before the first drop of rain even hits the windshield.
Exactly.
But how is the AI actually achieving that local cabbie intuition without having, lived in the city for 20 years?
Well, it achieves it through something called dynamic node weighting.
Okay, what does that mean?
Think about your seasoned cab driver. They know the route temporally and behaviorally, right? They know that the local middle school lets out at 3.15, so that specific intersection is going to be blocked by buses.
Right, right.
They intuitively weight those variables in their head. The AI just does this mathematically. It constantly pulls in vast data sets.
Like what kind of data?
Things like real-time weather APIs, historical traffic flow models, local event schedules like concerts or sports games, and even the synchronized timing of city stoplights.
Oh, wow. So it's basically assigning a mathematical probability of congestion to every single intersection based on all those overlapping factors.
Yes.
And it does this before any cars actually get stuck there.
Exactly. It simulates the immediate future of the city's traffic grid in real time, and it's updating those probabilities continuously based on your specific driving habits.
I mean, I definitely see the personal convenience there. Getting home 10 minutes faster is obviously great.
Yeah.
But the Source Digest implies this goes far beyond just individual luxury. It positions this continuous learning loop as a foundation for massive environmental sustainability.
Yeah, you really have to zoom out and look at the macro level effect here.
Okay, zoom out for me.
Well, traffic jams are an environmental disaster. Millions of gallons of fuel are wasted every year by vehicles just idling in gridlock.
That's true. Just sitting there burning gas.
Right. But when you have an entire network of cars equipped with this predictive AI, they aren't operating in isolation anymore. They begin to function with a kind of swarm intelligence.
Wait, swarm intelligence. So if the system calculates like a 90% probability that a jam will form on the main bridge in 20 minutes, it doesn't just warn the cars currently on the bridge.
No, not at all.
What does it do?
It subtly reroutes thousands of vehicles across dozens of different secondary arteries miles away.
Oh, well.
It disperses the pressure systemically. So the traffic jam never actually forms in the first place because the algorithm smoothed out the density of the vehicles before they ever reached critical mass.
That is incredible. And by automatically adjusting the car's mechanical settings for weather, say, optimizing the anti-lock brakes and traction control because it cross-referenced a localized drop in temperature with incoming precipitation, it's preventing that micro-level slip that causes the macro-level highway pileup.
Exactly. The AI in your dashboard is acting as a micromanager for a massive systemic safety network.
That's wild. It is literally identifying friction points in the physical world and smoothing them out.
Exactly like it identifies anomalies in the biological world.
Man. Okay, so we're talking about predicting predictable things, right?
Yeah.
Physics, momentum, human biology.
Things with clear rules, yes.
But the third section of our digest takes a very, very sharp turn.
It really does.
It pivots from the cold, hard realm of systemic efficiency directly into the abstract, highly subjective world of art and music.
This is where the philosophical questions really start popping up. The sources detail state-of-the-art AI systems that are now composing original symphonies and generating just visually stunning artwork.
And the digest makes a massive claim here. It literally states that these AI-generated works possess emotional depth.
A very bold statement.
Right. And I have to pause and push back on this because I know a lot of people listening will have the exact same reaction.
Of course.
I can completely understand an algorithm predicting traffic, but an LLM, or a generative AI model, is fundamentally just a probabilistic engine.
That's right.
It's just guessing the next pixel or the next musical note based on its training data. How do we cross the line from a highly sophisticated statistical parlor trick to actual emotional depth?
Well, you've just hit on the defining philosophical debate of this entire technology.
Glad I'm not the only one.
No, it's a huge question. To understand what the source means by emotional depth, we have to separate the origin of the emotion from the reception of it.
Okay, break that down for me.
The AI itself does not have a soul. It hasn't experienced heartbreak or joy or mortality.
Right. It's just running matrix multiplications.
Exactly. But it has analyzed millions of human compositions. It has mapped out the underlying structural patterns that actually evoke heartbreak in the human brain.
Oh, I see.
It understands the mechanics of our psychological triggers.
Okay, let's ground that a bit. You're saying the AI mathematically calculates that, say, a specific transition from a major to a minor chord combined with a sudden deceleration in tempo has a 98% probability of producing a feeling of melancholy in a human listener.
Yes, exactly. It maps the latent space of human creativity. It finds the mathematical distance between standard chord structures or visual color palettes.
Okay, but doesn't that just make it a really good mimic?
Well, the most crucial detail in the digest isn't actually about AI replacing human artists in a vacuum. It's about human artists using these systems as collaborative partners.
Ah, which reframes the entire concept.
That changes everything.
Instead of the AI being the guitar you play, it's more like you're sitting in a jam session and the AI is the other musician. And because it's a probabilistic engine, it might throw a totally weird, mathematically improbable riff at you just to see how you'll respond.
The jam session analogy is absolutely perfect because it really gets to the heart of how human creativity actually functions.
How so?
Well, we tend to romanticize creativity as this purely internal spark of solitary genius. But historically, immense creative breakthroughs actually come from friction,
Right, from collaboration.
from reacting to an unexpected constraint or a really unusual stimulus.
Like a jazz band feeding off a misbeat and turning it into a completely new time signature.
Exactly. Because human artists often get trapped in their own neural pathways. A painter might lean on the same color combinations, or a writer might use the same narrative tropes simply because those pathways are comfortable and they know they work.
Yeah, we all have our habits.
Right. But when you bring an AI into that creative process, it doesn't have those human biases. It doesn't care about comfort at all.
Oh, that's a good point.
It might suggest a harmonic leap or a visual composition that a human would never logically consider because it violates standard artistic conventions.
So it maps a path through that latent space that is so highly improbable for a human brain to default to. It essentially forces the human artist to forge a new creative neural pathway just to make sense of it.
It acts as a provocateur. It offers a completely fresh, unbiased perspective that dramatically expands the human artist's toolkit.
I love that.
The machine mathematically calculates the rule breaking, but the human artist is the one who decides if that specific rule breaking has genuine emotional resonance.
So the AI is actively pushing the artist into a completely new space.
Yes, it's a collaborative push.
Which brings us to the final piece of our deep dive today. If AI can dynamically adapt to biological data and traffic data and artistic patterns, what happens when it turns that adaptive behavioral analysis directly onto you?
And the digest explores this specifically through the lens of real-time entertainment,
Right.
specifically the integration of AI-driven characters in video games.
And we need to be really clear here. The sources aren't just talking about, like, higher resolution graphics or more realistic voice acting.
No, this is a structural change.
They are describing a complete overhaul of how narratives are actually built. These digital characters are using reinforcement learning to analyze player actions and adapt their behavior on the fly, creating entirely unique storylines for every single playthrough.
And to really appreciate the leap here, you have to contrast this with how interactive entertainment has historically been programmed.
Right. How did it used to work?
Well, even the most expansive, massive open-world games operate on complex but fundamentally rigid decision trees.
Oh, like the classic if-then statements. If the player opens this door, then trigger this dialogue.
Precisely. It is finite, and it is entirely pre-written by human developers.
Okay.
Eventually, a dedicated player can just learn the underlying script. You memorize the patrol route of the digital guards. You figure out the optimal strategy to beat the system.
Because the system is static.
Exactly.
But with this new behavioral analysis, the game isn't a static script anymore.
Not at all.
Let's look at the actual mechanics of this. If I'm playing a stealth game, and my natural human habit is to constantly sneak around the left flank of a map because, I don't know, I'm right-handed and it just feels more comfortable.
Right, a very common human bias.
Yeah. An older game just keeps running its pre-programmed loops on the right side, left side, wherever.
It doesn't care what you do.
But this AI tracks that specific behavioral data.
It continuously updates its mathematical model of your psychology.
So the villain's AI deduces my preference for the left flank, calculates the probability of me doing it again, and actively sets an ambush there for the next encounter.
Yes.
The environment becomes actively dynamically hostile to my specific personal habits. You aren't just playing the game anymore. The game is actively playing you.
Which, if you think about it, is the perfect inversion of the personalized medicine we discussed in the first second.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following that connection. You're saying the underlying mechanism in the hospital and the mechanism in the living room playing the game are identical?
Fundamentally, yes.
Wow, okay.
In the medical context, the AI analyzes your specific biological data to craft a bespoke, optimized treatment plan designed to eliminate friction and heal you.
Right.
In the entertainment context, the AI analyzes your specific behavioral data to craft a bespoke, optimized narrative designed to introduce exactly the right amount of friction to thrill you.
That is a genuinely fascinating parallel. The machine is studying the human subject in real time, adapting its own shape to perfectly fit the contours of our needs, our habits, and even our blind spots.
Exactly. Whether it's curing a disease, clearing a traffic jam, generating a melody, or setting a digital trap in a game, the core function is the continuous analysis of the human to dynamically generate a perfectly customized response.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together to look at the massive picture this source digest really paints.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at deep learning algorithms, processing high-dimensional medical scans, basically acting as superhuman diagnostic assistants, so that human doctors can reclaim the empathy and personalization of medicine.
And then we explored how predictive modeling and dynamic node weighting are turning our vehicles into swarm intelligent navigators, just smoothing out the macro level friction of city traffic.
Yeah, and from there, we stepped into the latent space of creativity, where probabilistic engines are acting as like jam session partners, throwing mathematically improbable ideas at human artists to break them out of their creative ruts.
And finally, we looked at reinforcement learning in entertainment, where digital worlds are actively studying our psychology to build perfectly customized experiences.
So across all these entirely different domains, the relationship between human and machine has just irrevocably changed.
It really has.
The tool has stepped out of the toolbox. It is an active, responsive collaborator woven directly into the fabric of our everyday lives.
It's everywhere now.
Which brings me to a final lingering thought, something I really want you to mull over as you step back into your day.
Always good to leave with a question.
We've spent this entire deep dive marveling at how these systems are learning to adapt to us perfectly.
They're completely optimizing the world around our specific preferences.
Right. But think about the psychological conditioning of that.
Mm-hmm.
If AI is actively training us to expect hyper-personalized, perfectly adapted experiences in our healthcare, in our driving, in our art, and in our games, how long until we entirely lose our tolerance for anything in society that isn't perfectly customized to us?
That's a great point because the real world doesn't dynamically adjust to our preferences.
Exactly. Actual humans are messy. They are stubborn, unpredictable, and deeply flawed.
They definitely don't analyze our behavioral data to ensure our interactions are frictionless.
Right. If this incredible bespoke technology trains us to expect a reality that anticipates our every single need, will it eventually make us completely impatient with the uncustomizable reality of dealing with each other?
It's a huge societal question.
It really is. So keep questioning the tools you use, keep exploring the hidden mechanics of your world, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.